Okay, so environmental and ecological issues. The ecological appraisal submitted in the application says the development has the potential to adversely impact valuable ecological features. So 3 questions. What is the biodiversity net gain for the proposals? Will the building have sustainable features? And will the car park be SuDs compliant?
Martin, do you want to start off this one, and then Towan maybe pick up the SuDs issue?
Yeah, of course. So with regards to the first question, so the ecological survey has in terms of being biodiversity net gain has resulted in a 30% net loss in terms of habitat units. So to achieve the 10% gain, which is the policy requirement, we will be doing as much landscaping as possible within our site, and the remainder of the units will be purchased off-site through a provider that obviously a broker that sells these credits. So the discussions with the provider are taking place now to ensure that we achieve the 10% gain to tick off that policy. In terms of the building, will it have any sustainable features? At the moment, the proposals include solar panels on the roof, as we've outlined. Tone, is there anything else from your perspective that you can tell us about from drainage perspective?
Yeah, so in terms of the surface water, this will be attenuated on site and then released into the network at an agreed discharge rate. I mean, we prepared a flood risk assessment and drainage strategy, and this accords with the SuDs hierarchy. So as part of the proposals, we're putting in permeable surfacing, rain gardens, and potentially rainwater harvesting to meet those SuDs requirements.
Can I just expand upon a few issues? So let's start with sustainability. So the building itself has what we call like a black box. So it very much looks at how its energy consumption is. And obviously all Lidl's energy is actually renewable energy that come to their stores. The black box is to help where there may be peaks and troughs in their energy consumption, so they can look at the individual store to ensure that it is being energy efficient. They have things like LED lighting within the store to ensure that it's the most efficient lighting that can come forward. And also, obviously, when the building has closed for the nighttime, all the lights will be switched off. So there is also some sensors on some of the lights outside. So obviously, the lights will only come on in the car park when it becomes dusk. So the lights are not on all the time. And again, the lights in the car park are directional lights, LED. So again, they don't create any light pollution to any of the surrounding properties. That's just to expand upon those points.
Thank you. Daniel.
Okay, so our last question. Sorry, Graham, do you want to come in?
Yes, it was just to follow up on the biodiversity net gain. It sort of sounded as if Ruislip was going to have a net loss, but somewhere else was going to get a net gain. Is that how the brokering thing works?
So let me expand upon this. So biodiversity net gain, BNG. So obviously the policy requirements in the local plan say that you have to achieve 10% net gain. On this site at the present time, obviously they've done a benchmark, i.e. what is on site at the present time. So that gives the baseline position. From that, obviously you will then look at the proposal to seek what impact that proposal will have on the baseline position. At the present time, as we said, there is a loss on this, and it's obviously a statutory requirement that we have to provide that 10%. Now, whether that can be all achieved on site or not are still up for debates at the moment. But if it can't be achieved all on site, there is obviously a requirement for the developer to find alternative sites where they could bring that biodiversity net gain to the area.
Right. I think Graham wants to follow up. Graham is head of RawMag, which is the Ruislip Woods area. So he has much more ecological knowledge than I do.
Thank you, Graham. The revised drawing, which was shared earlier, shows an even greater extent of the hedge on the southern side being destroyed and a sea of tarmac on a much wider pedestrian entrance. I realise that very few of you are local to the area, probably very few of you have visited the area, but we are only a couple of generations on from this being farmland, and our hedgerows are some of the indicators of where fields used to be. They are field edge hedgerows, and they are very biodiverse. Uprooting them and replacing them with a few cherry laurels will not be acceptable. Also, unfortunately, back in June 2016, the Ruislip community suffered flooding when the River Pin burst its banks. I, along with other residents, were members of a full-blown Environment Agency flood alleviation scheme project team, and we're pretty well experienced in terms of the need to think in terms of catchments rather than drainage. I'd have thought drainage is a pre-2010 and pre-pitch report idea of once we can get surface water out of our boundary, we don't need to worry about it. That's why we're asking about sustainable drainage systems. And that's why we're particularly concerned, because from the revised drawing you've submitted, it looks like even more impermeable surface than the existing car park and building. So we really do want as much biodiversity kept on site as possible. And we're not really interested if you're buying through a broker for some biodiversity up in Caithness or the Welsh Mountains. We want biodiversity in our community.
And yeah, okay. So just coming to that point in relation to, obviously, none of the credits would go outside of the area. That is a statutory requirement as well. So if
could you clarify what you mean by area? Because
so
I'm certain there's no broker
local,
offering biodiversity net gain credits within London Bath Hillingdon. There might potentially be within the GLA area, but I'm certain there's nothing within Hillingdon.
Well, it will be in Hillingdon. It's the local authority. So it has to be in the boundaries of the local authority. It can't go outside of that local authority area. So that's if we are, obviously, we're still obviously in the application stage at the moment. It's still going through the consultations. The scheme may change again, depending on what consultee responses we get. So in relation to the BNG, I obviously hear your comments with regards to hedgerows, etc. And that's why the baseline assessment has been undertaken to clearly say this is what's on site at the moment. It is for us, i.e. the developers and Lidl, to find the appropriate 10% net gain that is required. Whether that is all on site or within the borough, that is something that we need to consider. And obviously we're waiting for the responses back from the council on that. In relation to drainage, clearly it is, again, the lead local authority will provide those statutory comments to say what is acceptable and what's not. Obviously, runoff, absolutely. Again, from Lidl's perspective, they would not want to design a scheme that would cause an impact on runoff water to any of the surrounding properties. That's not in their interest as well. So if it is deemed that it is required further mitigation, that is something that will be looked at. But again, we're at the present time, we're waiting for the responses back from the appropriate body to tell us whether or not the scheme that has been put forward is adequate and meets those requirements. So if there is more mitigation that may be required to ensure that doesn't cause an impact to the local residents, that is something we will have to take on board and find a solution to.
Okay, thank you for that answer. What I would draw all attendees' attention to is the fact that the original planning application was for a very standard little tin box. The first response has come back with something much more fitting in terms of the visual element of the building. The community of Ruislip has some expertise both in biodiversity and in SuDs applications. So we really need your your next level in terms of BNG and SuDs, because we still appear to be at your opening gambit.